Alright guys, so the first ever set of patch notes for Marvel Rivals has just been released 2 days before the Season 1 patch itself, and there are a lot of hero changes to look at. Some of them are more influential than others, but we should definitely be seeing some of the play rates change and get shaken up for this patch, as certain heroes like Cap, Moon Knight, Winter Soldier and Cloak and Dagger got some big changes. I'm honestly surprised that they waited this long for a first balance patch, but I suppose that they should be given some props for their patience. I'm going to go over every hero change, starting with the team-ups, and explain what it might mean for the Season 1 strength of each individual hero. A word of warning, I still suck at voiceovers and went through this patch completely unscripted, so I do appreciate if you manage to stick with me. Alright, we're going to start off looking at the team-up abilities, so Hawkeye and Black Widow. To further tone down Hawkeye's oppression, we'll be reducing his seasonal buff, reducing Hawkeye's seasonal buff from 20% to 15%. So this isn't actually a team-up ability, he just gets this flat because of the seasonal buff. So they're just reducing his damage by 5%, or they're reducing the buff rather by 5%, 20 to 15. It's definitely going to make a big difference. I think this was something that people have been calling for pretty much the entire time the game has been out, just 20% damage buff, especially on heroes like Hawkeye. It's just insane. So yeah, they're going to be reducing that down a little bit, see if it has any effect. And then for Hela, Thor, and Loki, they're doing the same as what they did with Hawkeye, so they're just reducing the seasonal bonus from 20% to 15%. Again, with Hela, they've been calling for it the entire season, every player pretty much. Hela and Hawkeye are just way too overtuned, and they need some sort of flat damage nerf just to sort of bring them back into line with the rest of the DPS. So yeah, this is a good change, good step in the right direction. I still think they're both going to be very strong, but we'll have to see how much this nerf affects them. Then we've got Lunar Snow and Namor's team up. So we'll be increasing the threat of Namor's Frozen Spawn. So increase Frozen Spawn damage from 25 to 27. Increase Frozen Spawn slowing effect applied to hit enemies from 25% to 30%. And increase Berserk State Frozen Spawn damage from 16 to 18. So yeah, just Namor's team up with Luna is already quite strong. That extra turret just does so much for him. They're literally just increasing the DPS that it provides, and then also giving a small increase to the slow. They're just making the team up even better. But I think I'm not sure if this was necessary. They're probably doing it just because Namor's play rate, as far as I know, isn't too high. They want more people to play Namor, and Luna Snow's in a lot of games anyway. So, but yeah, these are big buffs to Namor for sure. They definitely make him extremely powerful when Luna Snow's in the game, and he's going to be probably S tier or maybe OP tier if Luna Snow's in the game in terms of DPS. Alright, so Rocket Raccoon, Punisher, and Winter Soldier team up. One of Rocket's best tools would be available more often. Reduce the cooldown of ammo invention from 45 seconds to 40 seconds. So this is just the big buff where they get infinite ammo and faster fire rate, and they don't have to reload for Punisher and Bucky. So this is, I'd say it's not a big buff. It's not the type of ability where you're going to be using it off cooldown anyway. You're going to be using it very selectively. So that 5-second shorter cooldown is rarely going to make much difference to them. Yeah, it's a small buff, but I don't think it'll make too much difference. Scarlet Witch and Magneto. So a bit underwhelming, the damage capability of this father-daughter team-up ability will be enhanced. Increase metallic fusion projectile damage from 55 to 60, and then increasing metallic fusion spell damage from 30 to 35. So it's just a 5 damage increase for metallic fusion, which is the big sword that Magneto gets, as far as I know. This sword is already quite oppressive when it can be used at certain times, but at the same time, Magneto isn't too popular of a tank. He's decent. But he just gets overshadowed at the moment by people like Doctor Strange and Groot. And then Scarlet Witch has her own problems, and it's probably one of the DPS on the lower end. So I think these two rarely get seen in-game together. And they're not a duo like Iron Man or Hulk, where they just get picked for the team-up. So I think in the grand scheme of things, this won't make much of a difference, but this team-up in the future is definitely one to look out for. Finally, the last team-up, we have Thor, Storm, and Captain America. So we'll be enhancing the damage capability of Storm's side of this team of ability, reduce the cooldown of Charge Gale from 20 seconds to 15 seconds, and increase the damage of Charge Gale from 50 to 55. So yeah, they're just increasing the uptime a little bit and increasing the damage as well. That's only for Storm as well. So with the Magneto and Scarlet Witch team up, the problem here is that Storm doesn't really get played very much because she is quite weak. And yeah, so because she doesn't really get played, this team up isn't really a problem or very problematic in any sense. It is a sizable buff, I guess, but it's not one of the more well-known or abused team-ups in the game. So I think, grand scheme of things, it won't really make much difference. It's just the 25% lower cooldown and 5% or 10% increase to damage. So numbers-wise, it's big, but it's not going to get utilized. Alright, so we're going to start off with the Vanguards and Captain America. Steve will receive some enhanced survivability, allowing more frequent entering and exiting out of combat. Reduce the delay time for shield restoration after releasing Living Legend from 3 seconds to 2 seconds. So that's just his shield right here. So that will start regaining health 2 seconds after he stops taking damage from it instead of 3. Allowing him to, I guess, go in and out of combat a bit more. And then reduce Liberty Rush cooldown from 12 seconds to 10. That's his Q charge, just 2 seconds off. And then increase base health from 650 to 675, 25% or 25 more HP base. And then reduce the energy cost for releasing Freedom Charge, his ultimate, so using it, from 3,400 to 3,100. And also reduce the additional health provided per second to self after releasing it from 110 to 100. Alright, so that just means his ult is going to charge up about 10% faster, and then the health that he gets, the self-healing, is about 10% less as well. These are nice buffs. The devs did say they wanted to increase his speed and sort of his impact and his mobility. I think they'll obviously help him. They're significant buffs, but at the same time, I feel like Cap's missing from the meta because he doesn't provide what a lot of the other Vanguards do provide. What the meta is right now is very much front to back. The tanks want to sort of just create space for your duelists and for your your DPS and your supports. Cap is like Venom. He's much more of a flanking, disruptive sort of tank who dives in and tries to create chaos. I don't think that really fits in high level meta right now. Unless he gets astronomical buffs, we're probably not going to see him get moved up too much in sort of like tank tier lists. But we'll have to see. Like, it's one of those heroes that, when played really well, can sort of create massive waves. Alright, so moving on to Doctor Strange, we'll be reducing the threat range and increasing the defense window of the Sorcerer Supreme. Add damage fall off to Maelstrom of Madness and Gamma Maelstrom, starting at 5 meters and reducing to 70% at 8 meters. So this is his E, his explosion. This pretty much means at 5 meters from the target, it's going to do 100% damage still. But then for the next 3 meters, because the radius of the ability is 8 meters, it's going to slowly fall off down to a minimum of 70% at 8 meters. So if we're standing here from the target, it will do 100% damage, but then the damage will get slightly lower up until about here, max range, where it'll be 70%. So that's a sizable nerf, because the ones at the edge, the ones furthest away from you, are going to likely be squishier characters, such as the DPS and the supports. The tanks are more likely to be closer and creating space. So it's definitely a significant nerf. And then we have slightly decreased the shield value recovery rate after releasing Shield of Seraphim from 80 per second to 70 per second. Yeah, this is his giant shield. After he drops it and he's waiting for the health to go back up, it's just going to recover 10 HP per second slower. So it gives people a little bit more of a window to abuse it. So I think what this means for Doctor Strange is not really that much, to be honest. I think he's still going to be the best tank in the game. He's still going to be OP tier, just because he's so versatile and he has certain abilities, notably his giant shield and his portal, and even his ultimate, to be honest, that are just game-changing, and his utility and his versatility overall is just completely insane, which is why he's the best tank in the game, and he also does a lot of damage for a tank. So I don't think it's really going to affect where he is and how he's played, but it's definitely a tone back. And it just allows some of the other tanks to sort of catch up a little bit in terms of strength. I still think he's going to be the best tank in the game. Alright, so for the God of Thunder. The God of Thunder could use some slightly increased survivability and improve success rate of his ultimate ability. So they're increasing the base health from 500 to 525, just a small 25 increase, which I think brings him a little bit more in line with most other tanks, because I think his health pool is the smallest, I want to say. And they also added immunity to control effects, so CC during God of Thunder ultimate ability. So he has slightly more HP, which I think is really good, because his survivability is always been his weakness, and if they really want to bring him up a bit more in the strength tier, then that could be something they target, and then they're making it so you can't be CC'd when you're ulting, which I think is really good as well. Because I feel like if you have an ult like this, you shouldn't be able to get CC'd. It just doesn't really make any sense. And there's plenty of ways to counter it where we don't CC for, like putting a shield between you and the middle, because the damage comes out from the middle, or just running away from it, or just shooting him. It's a very counterable ult already, and it's not that great, to be honest. So I think that's a fairly significant buff, just to try and bring his ult power a bit more in line with some of the other heroes in the game. The 25 health boost, I mean, it's going to make a difference. It's 25 more HP, and survivability is Thor's biggest weakness, probably. But at the same time, I think Thor gets played where he should be played, and he has very clear strengths and weaknesses already, and these buffs don't really change those strengths or weaknesses. I think he's still going to be played where he usually gets played, and he still won't be played where he doesn't get played, if that makes sense. So, yeah. Alright, so we've got Hulk. Dr. Banner has been dominant, but some decreased sustained combat capability upon entering the battlefield will bring him more in line with the other vanguards. Reduce the indestructible guard gamma shield value for Hero Hulk from 250 to 200. So a small nerf for Hulk. They're just nerfing his shield, his shift here, just so it takes 20% less damage, and it can go down a little bit easier. I'm not a fan of this nerf, to be honest, because I feel like not the only reason, but the big reason that people pick Hulk is for his team up, his gamma radiation team up. When you pair that with Doctor Strange and Iron Man, it's really, really powerful. And I feel like nerfing him as an individual hero probably isn't going to change that. And people are still going to pick him when they want that team up and they want that strength. So the last tank we have Venom. With increased survivability and threat of his ultimate, the symbiote Menace will strike fear into the backlines of the enemy team. So they increase the symbiote resilience bonus health ratio per health point lost from 1 to 1.2, and they increase the base damage of his Feast of the Abyss ultimate from 40 to 50. Yeah, so all this means is his E-Shield, which he usually uses when he gets low, will give him 20% more health than it used to. So every point of health he was missing before, it would give him 1. Now it's going to give him 1.2. And then the base damage of his ult, let's go get an ult charge, is going up by 25%. So it's going from 40 to 50. I think these are decent buffs. I don't think they'll change where he gets played. I mean, the base damage buff on his ult is definitely going to help. Even though it seems like it's only 10, he pretty much only ults backline targets who have sort of like 250 HP-ish on average. So it definitely will make a difference. And then I think the health is actually less problematic, because the health that you usually get from your E ability is so large that it usually gets affected by the decay anyway, and it doesn't really always get used to the max. So maybe you could say that's going to allow him to press E earlier and get the same effect, which can stop him getting burst when he's low HP, because getting burst down when he's low HP before he can press E is sort of the big way to counter Venom. So you could argue that it helps in that regard a bit, but I don't think it's going to make too much difference. It's just a very small buff for Venom. I think considering his problems, he doesn't really get played for the similar reason that Captain America doesn't get played. He just doesn't really fit in the meta. And as a dive tank, he doesn't do what Vanguards really need him to do, especially if you're playing sort of on the defensive side. Okay, moving on to Duelists, we have Black Panther. So we're slightly decreasing T'Challa's combat survivability, reduce the additional health provided to self after refreshing vibranium marks with Spirit Rend from 40 to 30 and the upper limit of additional health provided from 120 to 75. Okay, so this is actually quite a sizable nerf. I can understand why they're doing it because the Black Panther is quite oppressive. He's played by someone who knows how to pilot the hero. And they're just nerfing sort of his HP that he gets back so they can be more easily caught out and burst out and more easily punished. So if we throw a spear and then we dash through, we get 40 HP right now. That's going to go down to 30. And then the upper limit of the stacking. So if you dash through enough, I don't know if I can get it on just these two. But if you... Let's try. Oh. We do this. See, we have 120 HP now. That's going to cap out at 75 now. Just on paper, it looks like quite a big nerf, and it'll definitely make him much easier to kill. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it just adds more counterplay to him, because I think at the moment he's very oppressive, and he doesn't have too much counterplay. Sort of you just kill him when you don't, you hard CC him when you don't, but you're constantly doing sort of like 180s on your screen trying to kill him, so I think any sort of counterplay added to Black Panther is really good. Alright, so moving on to Black Widow, Natasha was very much in need of optimization when evaluating the release experience of her abilities, as well as slightly increase the threat of her own ultimate ability. So they've increased the range of the first effect of Edge Dancer from 3 meters to 5 meters. So that's the kick. It's got a little bit more range on it, just so you can, I guess, not miss it as easily and peel for yourself from a little bit further away. Then they've reduced the time required for Fleet Foot, so you're running to recover from 0 stamina to full, from 12 seconds to 4. So this is a huge buff. If we run right now, and we exhaust that stamina, that's going to take 12 seconds right now to fully recover. As you can see, it's quite slow. That's going to go down to 4 seconds, so it's 3 times less. And they have to be very careful when they're buffing any sort of hit scan heroes like Black Widow, because you put this sort of hit scan in the hands of someone who's very good at the game, especially if they can one-shot people in the head, it's going to be a bit of a problem. But yeah, increased mobility is definitely a good buff. I'm not sure if it'll make Black Widow viable, just because she has problems that aren't mobility. But yeah, and then they've reduced the time required for Electroplasm Explosion, so our ultimate, to reach max power from 1 second to 0.6 seconds. So right now, have to charge it for 1 second for it to reach max power. That's going to go down to 0.6, so she can get off a little bit quicker. So they've pretty much just increased the speed of everything Black Widow can do and how much she can move around the map, and then also made it a little bit easier for her to build for herself. So it's more of, in my opinion, more of quality of life changes to Black Widow, just to make her feel a bit better to play, but they're probably not going to move her much in terms of power rankings. Alright, so let's move on to Hawkeye. We'll be decreasing the medium-long range damage capability, reducing the threatening combat radius, and slightly improving the close combat resistance for the Avenging Archer. So slightly reduce the spread angle between every 2 blast arrows, and then reduce the triggering distance of his passive ability Archer's Focus from 60 meters to 40 meters. Reduce the maximum additional damage of the passive from 80 to 70. Okay, so the blast arrow change, I guess they just make it more accurate when you're firing them quicker. I don't think that's going to make too much difference, but the big one is the triggering distance of its passive. So 60 meters to 40 meters, it's quite a big long-range nerf. It's right here, so that's about 60 meters. And then after the nerf, it's going to reduce down to 40, which is about here. So this will be the max range you can charge in. I don't think this is actually going to make too much difference, because there's not many places on any of the maps where you're really going to be shooting down 60 meters of range. But I guess if there is a place in the map where you're going to be shooting down 60 meters of range, maybe like the start of the Clytar map, where you have to push into the big sort of circle bit before you get the payload, that could make a difference, because at the moment, the only person who could really compete right now at this sort of range would be Black Widow. But again, I don't think there's many scenarios where that 60-meter range is going to be fully utilized. And then they're reducing the maximum damage from 80 to 70, which is just a straight-up damage nerf. Okay, yeah, and as we saw earlier as well, there's also that 5% damage nerf from the seasonal buffs. It's no longer 20%, now it's going to be 15%, which is another 5% nerf. So I think they haven't done too much here in terms of nerfs. The blast arrow, I guess the blast arrows is a buff, but doesn't really make too much difference. I think most of the time there's going to be very few scenarios where the triggering range is going to make a difference. So it's really only the 5% damage nerf and the 10 damage nerf on this passive that really make too much difference. So they're definitely going to tone him down a bit. I think he's still going to be a very strong hero. Alright, so moving on to Hela, the other problem child. The goddess of death has been a menace, to say the least. And will be slightly decreasing her combat strength. So they're reducing her base health from 275 to 250. Just make her a little bit easier to kill. And then obviously she has the 5% team up seasonal damage. Well, I guess it's not team up. The 5% seasonal damage nerf has gone down from 20% to 15%. So she's losing 5% damage overall and then 25 HP. I don't think this is going to be enough to take her out the meta. I still think she's going to be extremely strong. Her survivability wasn't really a problem before, and I don't think it is going to be now. Like, she's not really the... Even though she can do it, she's not really the type of hero that needs that extra HP. She doesn't go looking for fights and duels on the side with other sort of duelists and assassin type heroes. She's more of a just pick off targets, kill tanks, sort of consistent DPS threat. And I think that 5% damage nerf from the seasonal bonus isn't going to be enough of a damage nerf to really take her out of the meta. So I still think she's going to be very strong. So moving on to Magik, the Queen of Limbo needed an increase to her threat after unleashing her ultimate ability. So they've increased the Umbral incursion damage in Dark Child form from 115 to 135. So Dark Child form is her ultimate, and then they've increased the damage of her E-dash by 20. So yeah, that's it. You probably get, yeah, I guess 2 of these is pretty realistic in one ult. 20 damage actually is quite a lot when you're considering that Magik is going to be diving backline most of the time. Look at the kills on people who have sort of the 250 to 300 HP range. I mean, 20 damage is quite a lot, and you can get 2 of them for 40. So it's definitely a good buff. I think Magik, she's quite difficult to play in the current meta and current state of the game. Like, she has quite high skill ceiling, but a good Magik can definitely cause big problems for your team. So we could potentially see her move up the power rankings a bit here and get played a lot more just from this seemingly small buff. But we'll have to wait and see. I think Magik is one of those heroes that's a bit like Wolverine, and people need to learn how to play her a bit better, and then she can be causing problems. Moon Knight, the Hand of Khonshu, will receive a slight increase in the threat of his ultimate ability. So they've increased the number of talons generated by the Hand of Khonshu from 10 to 14, and they've increased the explosion radius of each talon from 4 meters to 5 meters. So let's get an ult charge. This pretty much just means that he does more damage, or more DPS, and then it's more likely that his ults are going to hit people. So each one of these, there's only 10 of them going through right now, so that's going to increase to 14, so he has potential for more DPS, I should say. And then he also has more potential to hit people, because the explosion radius of each of those is going to be 25% bigger. So yeah, I think a big problem with Moon Knight is his ultimate right now. It's quite bad, just to say the least. It doesn't really hit people most of the time when you want it to. It's very easy to avoid and see coming. And it does a lot of damage, but people aren't just going to stand in it, so it's very hard to use. I mean, making it last longer, so there's more potential that people are going to be caught inside of it, and also increasing the explosion radius so people can't dodge it as easily is very good. That's 2 very good buffs. I think Moon Knight, he's probably a lot stronger at low ELOs than he is at high ELOs, just because he's people don't really pay attention to his unks, and they get punished for it, and he often goes unpunished in low elo games. But in high elo, I think he's too one-dimensional, and his only real trick is just to E and then left click, right click, try and one-shot Squishy from finding angles in the back line. Like, he's very easy to get on top of and dive, and he doesn't really he can't really do that much when he's countered properly. So I think at high elo he's not a very good hero, and he sort of needs changes to his kit in order for that change. He needs to be less of a one-trick pony that he is right now, where you just E, left click, right click, try and one-shot and squish you from above. Yeah. Alright, Namor, my main. We're optimizing the throw field of Namor's eggs. So adjust the throw feeling of Monstro spawn and Frozen spawn. Now Namor can more accurately throw them into the desired location. Alright, so that's just a quality of life buff. It's not really a proper buff. It's definitely going to make it feel a little bit better, but they're just making it so when you throw out one of your turrets, it's a little bit easier to get them where you want to get them. I mean, even though it's only a quality of life buff, it's definitely a good buff, because getting them up on walls like this or out of the way, so not just dropping them right in front of you, is definitely how you want to play Namor. Just because then it's much harder for the enemy to kill your turret, and they pretty much have to work for it. Because these turrets don't have a lot of HP, so you want to make them work for every shot they're going to take on it. So it's definitely a good buff. I think Namor was already starting to come up in the meta with Hawkeye and Hela being permabanned. He's just a very good, consistent, reliable DPS source, and he's also very versatile. He's good at tank shredding, obviously, but he's also good anti-dive. He has a good range. He's good at close range. You can even flank if you want him to. So he's a very versatile hero. I think with Hawkeye Hela being permabanned, he's seeing a lot more play. I don't think this is going to change how much he's getting played. I think if people don't play Namor, it's because they don't find him fun or interesting. They don't like playing him. It's not because he's not strong enough. And yeah, it's just going to make him a little bit easier to play. A little bit more nice to play, I guess. But he's still going to be picked at high elo quite a lot just because he's a strong hero. Maybe it brings more attention to him, and he gets picked more in low elo as well. Psylocke will be providing more options for other heroes to counter the Demon Slayer's ultimate. Now Dancer Blottify ultimate ability will check for barriers, including Magneto's Metal Bulwark and Hulk's shield. Okay, so basically this just leaves more room for Psylocke to be countered. So it means right now, when she ults, she just hits people inside of her ult, and she doesn't consider shields. And now there's potential for, let's say there's a squishy back here, and then this is, we'll do it like this. Let's say the one at the back is the support, and this is the tank, a Magneto with a shield. This Magneto can now use his shield to essentially block my ult from getting to that back line. I'm assuming that's what it means, but it just means either that, or it means Magneto himself will be protected if he has a shield up. So yeah, this literally just means there's a little bit more counterplay for Psylocke, or if you're not able to get out of the ult, you can just prop up a shield, and then it'll consider that shield and start hitting the shield instead of you. I think in terms of changing how she's played, it doesn't really make too much difference. Obviously it adds more counterplay, which is always good. You always want counterplay of big abilities, but at the same time, there's going to be few scenarios, I think, where Psylocke is ulting a tank in the circle. She's going to be hard diving and getting behind, flanking, and getting on the supports in the back who don't have these defensive measures. The tank is going to be too far forward to get back and help. The Punisher, we're slightly increasing the damage capability of Punisher's weapons, slightly reduce the spread of deliverance and adjudication. That's a shotgun and it's assault rifle. So they're reducing the spread. Alright, so I think this makes not much difference for his primary weapon, this assault rifle. The spread on it was already quite, you see how far away I am, it's already quite small. It's quite an accurate weapon, so if you have good aim, you can really abuse it. And it doesn't really have any recoil at all. So they're reducing that, but it doesn't really make much to a difference. And then shotgun, I think, makes a bit more of a difference, or quite a lot more difference actually, because the shotgun spreads out very far. So this will essentially increase the range a little bit from the shotgun. Right now, I think you have to be sort of here-ish to do significant damage because of the spread, otherwise you're just going to be firing bullets all over the place. So maybe after the nerf that gets a little bit better, and it'll definitely be a big buff for the shotgun, but it doesn't really make a difference for the assault rifle. I think buffing the shotgun's good because Punisher's problem right now is that he's quite easy to dive, I think, in terms of DPS. A lot of the DPS have sort of good self-peel abilities, but Punisher doesn't really have too much. He has a smoke grenade and he has his shotgun. So he can fight back in terms of the damage department, but he can't really escape. So I'm giving him a little bit of extra leeway when it comes to how effectively he can use this shotgun is actually quite good. And should be a good change for him. Right, so moving on to Scarlet Witch, we're increasing Wanda's combat strength when she's facing duelists or strategists. Increase Chaos Control's fixed damage from 50 per second to 60 per second. Reduce the percentage damage per second from 5% to 3%. And then increase the Chthonian burst projectile damage from 30 to 35. Okay, so they're adjusting her primary damage and her primary left click and her right click damage just to make it easier to face duelists and strategists, squishy targets, but also slightly nerfing the percent HP damage that it does. So at the moment it does 50 damage per second plus 5% of their maximum health. Then this does 30. So they're changing it so it does 20% more damage, but then you also lose 2% max HP damage per second. So you'd have to run the numbers on these, but I'm assuming they've tested it themselves and it provides more DPS for duelists and strategists. And then it's probably about the same for a tank, if you're hitting a tank. So they're just buffing a sort of individual assassination and dueling capabilities. Do I think it's going to make Wanda playable? Or, sorry, better. I think she is already playable, she's not very good. No, not really. I don't think it will make enough of a difference. I think these damage nerfs or buffs are fairly small. Overall, when hitting a squishy target, it's definitely going to do noticeably more damage. But I don't think it's enough to make her playable. Like, I don't think she has enough going for her in the ability department. Some stuff, especially her ult, is just not very good. Like, it's just not very good ultimate. There's just better options. Like, why would you play someone like Scarlet Witch when you could play sort of the same old OP characters like Hela and Hawkeye and stuff like that? So a good buff, good step in the right direction, but I think it's unlikely to make a difference. Alright, so moving on, we have Storm. The Weather Witch needed an overall increase in her damage capabilities. Yes, she does. We're also optimizing the feel of her left click projectile and the release experience of her ultimate ability. So we're increasing the wind blade projectile speed from 100 meters per second to 150 meters per second, and then left click damage from 50 to 55. They're increasing bolt rush damage from 70 to 80, and then for her ultimate, after releasing Omega Hurricane, the ultimate ability, the bonus health provided for herself will increase from 350 to 450, 100 increase, and then following its conclusion, the extra health will no longer vanish instantly, but will instead diminish at a rate of 100 per second. So it's going to take 4.5 seconds to diminish. Okay, these are really good buffs in the right direction. I think Storm's problems right now is, one, she's very easy to kill and too slow. Like, she's just so easy to pick out the sky. And she doesn't really have, I mean, people like Iron Man can fly around. They're easy to pick off as well, but they can fly around faster. And then two, she doesn't do enough damage. Those are her big problems, and they're big enough that she's probably one of the worst heroes in the game. So they're increasing her left click's projectile speed. So this will go 50% faster, which I think is a really good buff. It's quite slow at the moment, so it's going to bring it a lot closer to hit scan. I think it'll be a little bit faster than Namor's projectile now. That's a really good buff, because obviously it's not got AoE, like you have to hit them directly, so it's already quite hard to hit, and it doesn't do damage. And they're also increasing the damage by 10%. I don't know if that's going to be enough of a damage increase, because I think her damage is still going to be low, but we'll have to see. Maybe because of the increased projectile speed, the overall DPS is going to be much higher, because people are hitting much more shots. And then they're increasing the bolt rush damage by 10 as well, which is our right click. So it's just another small damage increase. Hopefully it brings her more up to par with the other heroes in terms of the damage department, because I feel like Storm as a hero doesn't really offer much else apart from damage. And I guess survivability, because she can be up in the air and take more problematic and off angles and stuff like that. And then after ulting, the bonus health provided for her will be 100 more, and then following its conclusion, it will diminish rate of 100 per second instead of instantly. Okay, so this is just more survivability. When she ults, that 600 health is now going to be 700. And then right now, when it ends, that's all of her health instantly gone, so she can get picked off really easily if she's not sort of in cover or in the air, which she won't be because she was just ulting, and she'll be vulnerable. And now that's going to retain for a bit, and that bonus health is going to help her get back to a good position where she can go back to freely DPSing, and she won't just die instantly when she comes out of her ult. So I think, yeah, that's her ult change is very good quality of life change, just to allow her to adjust back after she ults. And then the projectile speed, the 50 meters per second increase, very good as well. Should make her a lot easier to play and a lot better to play. And then there's 2 small damage increases as well, which are good steps in the right direction. Overall, it should make quite a big difference to Storm. They're really big buffs if you take them as a whole. But she still has problems, and I don't think these are enough to get her over those problems completely. But yeah, we should be seeing more play from Storm. She's definitely going to be a much stronger hero after this patch. Squirrel Girl. We're increasing the threat of Doreen and her furry friends in their auto ability. So, addition of new effect to the unbeatable Squirrel Tsunami, her ult. The squirrels will rush towards the nearest enemy after bouncing instead of bouncing randomly, but they're also reducing the Squirrel Tsunami health from 600 to 300. Okay, so when you ult, it's going to bounce off a wall, and instead of bouncing randomly, this ran off the map and then bounced at all, it's going to target the nearest enemy, so it'll be this bot. And then it'll bounce again and target the nearest enemy, so it's going to hit much more people. At the moment, it's very easy to avoid, and it can be an okay ultimate, but most of the time it's just very easy to avoid and get out of the way of, and doesn't really hit many people. It's just more from creating space and, I guess, forcing the enemy to reposition. So now it's going to hit much more people, it's going to be much more of a threat and require the enemy to look at it and deal with it much more easily, or much more quickly. But at the same time, they're reducing the health from 600 to 300, which is quite a big nerf. It's not really the hardest ultimate to hit. I think most of the time people don't shoot it because they don't know you can shoot it. But you can shoot it, and it's only got 300 HP now. So that's a lot of counterplay added. Even though it targets people, 300 HP is not a lot. And you should be able to kill it very easily if you focus it down. So I don't actually think this is a buff. I think what I think they should have done, because Squirrel Girl's not exactly... She's an okay hero. She's probably middle of the pack right now when it comes to the DPS. I think they should have added the quality of life change, the auto-targeting for the bounce. That's a really good change. And then just left the HP as it is. I think half in the HP is going to be too much of a nerf to the ult. It's going to be too easy to do that 300 damage to it. And that just completely removes her ult from the game. So we'll have to see what happens and if people start shooting her ult more. But I think at the moment she'll feel a lot better to play, but she'll also be much more counterable. Okay, we have some Winter Soldier buffs. We'll be adjusting Bucky by decreasing his long-range combat strength and increasing his survivability in medium close-range combat. So they're increasing the bonus health provided by Bionic Hook and Tainted Voltage from 30 to 40. So that's his E, and his right click, his hook. So at the moment, if you shift, you get 50 HP. If you E or you right click, you get 30. So they're increasing the E and the right click from 30 to 40. So he gets more bonus HP from cycling his abilities. He does cycle them quite often, so that's a pretty big buff in terms of survivability. And then increase Rotterstern's projectile damage from 70 to 75. So just a straight up almost 10% damage buff. And then reducing the area damage from 70 to 65, and reduce damage decay from 65% at 40 meters to 60%. And then they're increasing space health from 250 to 275, 25 increase. Okay, so he's got a lot more survivability, he gets a lot more HP. from his passive, and also his base passive is up by 25. So that's a big buff because he is one. Or is he is a hero that plays up and close and personal a bit more often, a bit more at the short medium range anyway. So the extra HP is better for him than it is for most duelists. And then the strip increasing his gun damage by 5, but then they're nerfing the AoE behind by 5. So he's better at killing primary targets rather than people standing behind. So this is going to do, it doesn't hit that close or that far away. So people standing behind the tank, for example, will do less damage to you, but the primary target will take a bit more. And then they're reducing his range a bit. So at 40 meters, he's going to lose, right back here, it's quite far away, he's going to lose 5% more damage than before. So that's a 65% of his actual damage. It's going to be 60% now, coming in the new patch. So yeah, overall, I think pretty big buffs for Bucky. I mean, the nerfs are fairly small and insignificant, to be honest. I mean, 5... In my experience playing Bucky, the area damage behind the initial target doesn't actually get used that much. Most of the time, you're only going to be hitting one guy anyway. And then he's also, like I said, you play him up close and personal a bit more. You want to play him probably like 10 meters, 15 meters range. Maybe if it's sometimes like 5 meters. You're never really playing at the 40 meter mark. And if you are, you're just spamming damage for the sake of spamming damage and maybe getting ult charge. So I think the nerf to his area damage and his range doesn't really have too much impact. But then the damage buff is good. I think it counteracts those nerfs by itself. And then the bonus HP you get and the increased base health you get are huge. Like they're quite big increases considering how much he spams these abilities. And also the HP buff is just a straight 10% HP buff. So definitely big buffs for Bucky. Alright, so the final duelist is Wolverine. This one's a bit controversial because they are buffing him. But obviously Wolverine is seeing a lot more play nowadays. People initially, when the game first came out, they thought he was bad. Then we were all proven wrong, as certain Wolverines have showed us how to play him, and he's actually a very strong hero. In the current meta, he's very good at tank shredding and sort of breaking the front line of the enemy team. So Logan will receive increased to his base combat strength and slight decrease in additional survivability after activating Undying Animal. So they're increasing his base health from 300 to 350, so he's going to be quite a tanky duelist. They're also reducing the damage reduction provided by Undying Animal's E from 50% to 40%. So it lasts, what, 5 seconds, reducing damage reduction by 10%, but then they're increasing his HP by almost 20%. So yeah, he's definitely going to be tankier and have increased survivability, and it's also going to make him less reliant on his E to survive, and because he just has more base health, his survivability as a whole just goes up. He's not going to be reliant on his E. So it's definitely a buff. I think this could be problematic. I think Wolverine is already a very strong hero, and as people learn how to play him more and more, he's only going to get stronger. I think people are still learning to play him, even though some of the best Wolverines in the world have showed us how to play him. There's a lot of room for improvement for most people, because he's definitely one of the more difficult duelists to pull off. You have to have good awareness, good game sense, good sense of timing, and his playstyle is quite unconventional. So yeah, we'll have to see where these buffs take us. At the end of the day, I think they'll just make him even more overpowered. He's already really good if you can play him, and then they're not really going to change how he's played at all. They're just going to make him stronger. Alright, so moving on to the strategists. We've got Cloak and Dagger. Ty and Tandy will receive an increase to their healing capabilities, as well as an expansion to the coverage area of their ultimate ability. So they're reducing Dagger Storm cooldown from 15 seconds to 12 seconds. It's quite a big reduction. And then they're increasing the number of dashes in Eternal Bond, the ultimate, from 3 to 4. So these are actually quite big buffs. I was actually surprised to learn that Dagger was getting such big buffs, because she is one of the best supports in the game. I think just below Mantis and Luna, she's at that tier, and she's the best healer in the game, just straight up. Like, her healing capabilities are number 1. So they're reducing that cooldown, this giant healing sphere, from 15 to 12. That's a 20% reduction. She just has more AoE heals. And then they're increasing the number of dashes in her ult from 3 to 4, which is the bigger change. Now this makes a big difference for a few reasons. One is you can cover more area. So now you can do this. You can already cover quite a big radius. It's not quite Lunar Mantis ult, but it's similar in a sense. It does damage and heals. Now you can cover a bit more of a radius, and the other reason is so you can actually stack the healing and the damage on these. So if I do this, this right side will have double the effectiveness of the left side because I went over it twice. So now you can use the ult to go over both parts twice. So you can essentially cover an entire capture area twice and have double the effectiveness of healing or damage, and it just brings it much more up to par with Lunar and Mantis ult, which essentially make your team invulnerable when you're using it. So definitely big buffs across the board for Cloak and Dagger. I think, like I said, the Cloak and Dagger is not really someone who needs buffs, but they're just trying to bring other strategists up to the same power level as Lunar Snow and Mantis, because at the moment they just dominate the strategist meta. It's just always those two at the top, just because the roles are so powerful is the main reason. So they're just trying to bring everyone up to speed and try and get more gameplay out of Cloak and Dagger, I guess. So for Jeff, we'll be adjusting the range of his ultimate ability so it now better fits the warning marker. In addition, we'll be also increasing his healing capabilities. So they're adjusting Jeff's ultimate range from a 10-meter sphere to a 10-meter radius and a 5-meter high cylindrical spell field. So I think this is actually a reduction. Just if I'm thinking about it on the top of my head, it's a reduction for flying heroes. But I don't think it makes any difference for land heroes. They're just making it, they're making his ult radius line up better with visuals. Just has sort of a quality of life for everyone who's playing against Jeff ult, which is always good. Like it's not fun to be ulted where you're clearly out of the radius. And then they're increasing the healing of Joyful Splash, so it's left click from 140 to 150. Yeah, I mean, it's a nice small compensation for the ult inevitably hitting less people. I think at the end of the day, they're quite small changes. They will just make Jeff a little bit less frustrating to play against, and then bring up his healing strength a little bit. But he's probably not going to move too much in terms of strength. I think he's just, to be honest, even if he's fun to play, he's outclassed by the other strategists. He just doesn't provide as much as they do, so he's probably not going to be played too much more. He is fun, I'll give you that. He is one of the more fun strategists to play, which is the main reason he gets played, but he's probably the weakest one. And I don't think that's going to change from this patch. Lunar Snow. We've been enjoying her dropping the base, but we've made adjustments to Lunar's ult to prevent players from abusing its healing capabilities. Okay, so this is the spamming that everyone's been doing. So they're increasing the interval for switching between healing and damage in Fate of Both Worlds from 0.1 seconds to 0.5 seconds. So yeah, this just means that, I mean, this doesn't, I guess this is 0.1 seconds. So this just means you can only swap twice a second, every 0.5 seconds, instead of being able to swap 10 times per second. So you can no longer spam it like this. It's just going to go back to regular toggling, healing on and off. This, yeah, like they said, this is just in place to stop people abusing how the ult works and to stop any potential bug interactions that allow you to have too much healing or too much damage boost, or even both of them at the same time. And it's just going to go back to how it's intended to be used. So this is more of a bug fix, if anything. Mantis. Another small change will be making Mantis a bit less fleet-footed, reducing her roaming support capabilities. Reduce Nature's Favor, her passive move speed, from 2.5 meters per second to 1.5 meters per second. So it's the move speed that you get when you're full HP. It's quite a big nerf, just because it makes her much easier to kill. It's quite a significant, 1 meter per second is quite a significant move speed nerf. And at the moment, the only reason she's not easy to kill is because of her move speed and a small hitbox. So this definitely does open up some more counterplay for Mantis, because she already has self-peeling in terms of pretty much just sleep. So yeah, it's just opening up more counterplay for Mantis, making her a bit easier to kill. She's caught out of position and making it a bit harder for her to reposition and run around the map. Do I think it's going to make her not become or not be an S tier OP support? No, not really. I think she's going to stay and keep that spot with Lunar Snow still, but it definitely opens up more potential to counter and kill her. Rocket Raccoon. Rocket could use some enhancement to his healing capabilities, increasing the healing with his repair mode from 60 per second to 70 per second. So yeah, I think Rocket is maybe the weakest hero in the game when it comes to strategists. It depends where you are really on the field. This right click is what they're buffing. So it fires the orb that bounces around. Now it's going to heal for 10 more per second. It's quite a big buff in terms of just raw value. And it'll definitely help him out because his healing is why people don't pick him, or at least the primary reason. He just doesn't heal as much as other supports, especially the big healers like Cloak and Dagger and Lunar Snow. He's just very outclassed in that sense. And healing is just such a big part of the game right now. And it's just so important that it puts him behind in terms of strength. So I think this is definitely a good step in the right direction to help bring him up to speed and up to power level with the rest of the supports in the game. That about covers the entire patch. If you made it this far, thank you for sticking with me, and let me know your thoughts on the patch down below.